Hello everyone, I'm Sarika Singh, Consultant Senior Executive Officer at NIOS. Today we are going to understand the chapter The World of Organization, which is a secondary level chapter. It is a part of psychology and it is lesson number 22. So today we are going to discuss about the world of organization and how does it work. So in today's world, an individual alone cannot achieve all the desired goals because of any activity requires contribution from many persons. Therefore, people often get together and work to achieve a common goal. For this particular purpose, the coordination and systematic approach is needed, such as the group of people is called an association. You must have seen in your locality where two or more people get together and start a business of their own. This is an example of a small organization, whereas the large factories with thousands of employees are the example of large organizations. So we understood that there are two types of organizations, the large organizations and the small or the individual organizations, where there are people who are doing certain business of their own, and the large organization include lots of employees under them with a large organization such as big factories. Now, every organization has its own norms because it works as a system. These lessons help you to know about the key features of any organization and familiarize you with the world of different organizations. If you can see, many people, when they hold their hands together, they form an organization, and by which they can contribute to the key features of certain organization, work on it, and do the particular work which have been prescribed to them. So if you can see on your screen, there are the types of groups in an organization have been mentioned. There are two different type of groups. One is formal group and the other is informal group. The formal group contributes of command groups, which the people whom we can command, whom we can direct certain things that has to be done. The task group and the committees. So the formal groups include the formal groups which can be directed to pursue the same goal or same thing that they want to achieve, same factor that they want to achieve. But if you will see the informal group includes the interest group, the friendship groups, cliques, the sub-cliques, and any of the people who are like the family also. It includes the informal groups. So informal groups are the groups in which the people are more known to you, and you know them informally. It could be of friends or family or some sort of an interested group that you have met in your life. And there is a Silas classification of groups as well, which is like apathetic groups, erratic groups, strategic groups, and conservative groups. But it depends upon the distribution about what you want to pursue and how you want to pursue further. Now, after studying this particular lesson, you will see there are different objectives of this lesson. The first one is that it describes the organization as a system. It explains the organizational climate and also analyze the factors influencing the productivity and excellence at work. The organization as a system is basically a social unit which is created with a specific purpose, and we can have a better understanding of an organization if we view it as a system. The system approach recognizes that organizations have a unique properties, capabilities, and its components hold a mutual relationship. It's very important that we understand that any organization have these properties and the capabilities and the components. Whoever is working and whatever we are working on, the components are very much clear to hold the mutual relationship between the people around. Now, if you can see your screen, there is an organizational structure, a pyramid that is mentioned. So what is an organizational structure before we proceed? It is a system that basically outlines how certain activities are directed in order to achieve the goal of an organization. So it is very important that we understand that what we want to achieve, what is our goal is, and if we are not aware about our own goal, then the organization together can't contribute to anything. Once we know our goal, once we know what we are working on, the organization sets up and the people accordingly start participating and productivity starts depending upon what we want to achieve and target in that organization. You can also see there is another pyramid which is showing you the different mission, process, roles, organizational structure and the people practices. So this is how it works. A system may be either closed or open, and a closed system does not have any interaction with the external environment. The modern organizations are more or less open systems. Now, an open system is in constant interaction with the environment. It is characterized by the continuing process of input, transformation as well as an output. The organization get inputs from the environment and transform them into the outputs which can be supplied to the environment. The organization also gets the feedback from the environment and takes the suitable steps to meet the challenges and expectations of the environment. Now, let's understand about the inputs, outputs of different organization and how it impacts us. The input, which is each system, takes certain kind of inputs from its environment. These may be in the form of human resources, which is HR, capital, technology, material, as well as the information. The inputs received from the environment are processed within the organization to produce the desired output. It's very important to understand that how input works. Now, if you can see on the screen, there is a small paragraph which is regarding the factors of the production. The input needed for creating a good or any services which may include a land, labor, entrepreneurship as well as capital. So now if you can understand that whenever we are starting or initiating any sort of an organization as a system, we need to put certain inputs in that, and inputs can be of in any form. It could be the human resources, it could be the capital, it could be the technology, it could be the material, as well as it could be the information that we are putting in. Once the input is received from the environment, it is as being processed within the organization to produce the desired output. Now, the outputs. The outputs may be both intended as well as unintended. Intended outputs are usually called objectives. Now, if you could understand intended and unintended outputs, it means that sometimes we know what conclusion we are going to get or what result or objective that we are working in. So let's take an example. If I want to form a pen in my organization, so my input would be everything through which a pen could be formed. So I know that whatever input I am putting in, I am going to get an output of a pen. So over here, my objective or my output was intended, that I knew what my output is. But sometimes when we are putting our input in the organization, we are not maybe aware about what we are going to get as an output. So that output is known as unintended. For instance, the high productivity is an intended objective. An unintended objective may be the informal relations among the group members. It may, however, be stated that all unintended consequences are not undesirable. Sometimes we might get certain unintended consequences which are desirable and which are good for the organization. Now, if you can see on the screen, again there is an undesired goal, desired goal which we wants to pursue, and the input starts, the processing starts, it comes with the output, and the result could be intended, unintended, it could be desirable, it could be undesirable, it could be immediate or delayed. This particular picture shows us so many things. If you can read this picture, you can understand how an organization as a system works. The desired goal, whatever we are planning, is our goal and objective that we want to pursue. We start with the putting inputs. Inputs, as we have discussed, could be lots of things such as the human resources, capital, technology, material, information. These were our inputs. Then the processing period starts, in which the input, whatever we have put in as an input, processes and form the final conclusion, which is the output. And output, which is the result, could be of different types, as it has been mentioned. It could be intended, it could be unintended, it could be desirable sometimes, it could be undesirable sometimes. It might be possible that the output which have been produced, it may not be useful for us. So it could be undesirable as well as it could be immediate. Sometimes our output could be immediate, like on immediate basis we got the result once we put the input, the processing done, and we got the result. But sometimes it could be delayed as well. Now, how an environment is impacted and useful as an organization. An organization is called an open system because it is influenced by and also influences the environment. The suppliers of inputs, customers, and many other organizations constitute the environment of a system. Through the process of feedback, the system gets connected with the environment. It's very important that we understand that an organization is called an open system because it is influenced and also influences the environment. Environment is so much important in any organization because the suppliers of the input, customers, and many other organizations constitutes the environment of a system. So directly, indirectly, any organization, because it's called open system, it impacts the environment. And through the process of the feedback, the system gets connected with the environment. Now, if you can see on your screen, there is an organization as an open system. Now, if you can see, we can see the inputs over here, which includes the raw materials, human resources, capital, technology, information. Now the transformation process starts, which include the employer's work activities, management activities, technology, and operational methods. It all comes under the transformation process. Now the output come out to be the products and services, financial results, information, as well as human result. It all works in and out the environment. If you can see the diagram, above those boxes there is a line which shows environment, and below there is a line which shows environment. This is a perfect diagram that you can draw in your examination as well as any other competition where you feel like you want to show that how an organization as an open system works. So you can just draw this diagram which shows a capability of all the three things together. Now, thus it is clear that organizations do not exist in a vacuum. They are social institutions operating in the larger society of which they are the part of. The organization as well as the individual both share a reciprocal relationship. For example, the nature of the organizations and technology have all changed the society. We are becoming used to the modern amenities like computers, internet, mobile, and other electrical appliances. Thus, the modern technology has transformed the lifestyle in many different ways. India has been primarily an agrarian society in the past, which is an agricultural society, but with all the advancement, it is moving towards an industrial mode of life. The people who used to practice agriculture in India was huge in number earlier, but now it has been decreasing day by day because even the people who are practicing agriculture wants their children to go outside and study and do something more good in the industrial factor. So the agricultural society, which is the agrarian society, is decreasing. The shift has brought with it a change in the attitudes and values of the people. The competition and consumerism are becoming important in the context of growing market economy. Now, if you can see these pictures, there are the factors that particularly impacts the microeconomic competition. There is a product feature, the number of sellers, the barriers to the entry, the information availability, as well as the location that you can see. And also, if you can see the definition of the consumerism, which is an economic and social system that encourages the consumption of goods and services as a means of attaining well-being. So these are the things that you need to understand. in the organization as a system, that not everything works according to our inputs and outputs. The consumerism as well as the factors that affects the macroeconomics, microeconomics and macroeconomics are the major things that impacts the organization. Now there are subsystems of an organization. Organization usually has a number of parts or subsystems, and the key subsystems are described below. The goal subsystem. It comprises of the overall goals and objectives of the organization and also the specific goals of different departments and individuals in the organization. The technical subsystem. The subsystem refers to the use of knowledge, facilities, equipments and technology by the people who work in the organization. The managerial systems. This involves the planning and coordination of the activities undertaken in the organization. The structural subsystem. The people work together on well-defined tasks and integrated activities in different units like production, marketing, HR or departments. They make up the structural subsystems. And the last, which is the psychological subsystem. People live in social relationships within an organization, and this must not be viewed simply in terms of people and technology, but also in the terms of coordination or structure of work, tasks based on the following certain rules, regulations, norms and values. So, if you can clearly see that there were 5 different subsystems of an organization which becomes the part of the organization, and because of the, if we are not following these subsystems, then overall development of an organization would definitely be a failure. So there has to be a goal subsystem, the technical subsystem and managerial subsystem that will do the processing in the organization, and the structural subsystem which will include that how our processing should be in a proper structure. And the last is the psychological subsystem, about which all the tasks, rules, regulation and norms and values will take place. Now if you can see the diagram on your screen, there is a proper description of all the subsystems. Now let's study. The goals and values subsystem. It includes the culture, philosophy, overall goals, group goals as well as individual goals. Moving on to the technical subsystem. The knowledge, techniques, facilities as well as equipments are there. Now let's take a small break and then we can continue with our subsystem of an organization further.
उत्कृष्ट जीवन शैली और शिक्षा, कामकाज और रोजगार के साथ घर बैठे शिक्षा, स्वाध्ययन सामग्री, उन्नत तकनीक और व्यवहारिक ज्ञान, जन विकास और राष्ट्र निर्माण की ओर अग्रसर NIOS यानी राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालयी शिक्षा संस्थान। NIOS के इन्हीं प्रयासों को चरितार्थ करते हुए मानव संसाधन विकास मंत्रालय, भारत सरकार की एक पहल स्वयं प्रभा चैनल, जो देता है उच्च गुणवत्ता वाले शैक्षिक और ज्ञानवर्धक कार्यक्रमों का प्रसारण सीधे आपके द्वार। पाणिनी चैनल नंबर 27 के माध्यम से माध्यमिक स्तर के शिक्षार्थियों के लिए घर बैठे 10वीं पास करने का अवसर, उच्चतर माध्यमिक स्तर यानी 12वीं के शिक्षार्थियों के लिए शारदा चैनल नंबर 28 पर ज्ञानवर्धक और चुनिंदा विषयों पर रुचिपूर्ण कार्यक्रमों का प्रसारण, माध्यमिक स्तर पर सांकेतिक भाषा में दिव्यांग शिक्षार्थियों के लिए भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा और योग के कार्यक्रमों का ज्ञानामृत चैनल नंबर 30 पर प्रसारण, भारत के सभी शिक्षकों के शिक्षण प्रशिक्षण को।
Hello learners, So we were discussing about the subsystems of an organization, and we were discussing the different type of subsystems. Now let's start with the first one, which is the goals and values of a subsystem. The goals and values of a subsystem may include the culture, philosophy, overall goals, group goals, as well as the individual goals. The other part of the subsystem is the technical subsystem, which includes the knowledge, techniques, facilities, as well as equipments. The managerial subsystem may include the goal setting, planning, assessing the resources, assembling the resources, organizing, implementing, as well as controlling. These all come under the managerial subsystem. The psychological subsystem include the human resources, the attitude, the perceptions, motivation, the group dynamics, leadership, communication, as well as interpersonal relationship also comes into psychological subsystems. And the last, which is the structural subsystem, which includes the task, the workflow, the work groups, the authority, information, flow, procedures, as well as rules. So as you can see, the subsystems are included with subsystems of an organization are included with these 5 different type of subsystems, and this is how the overall environmental system works. These all 5 subsystems once included together form a better organization, give better productivity, and analyze the resources and functions more properly. Now, the climate is the atmosphere of an organization, a relatively enduring quality of its internal environment, which is experienced by the members and influences their performance. It conveys the impression people have about the internal environment within which they work. It may also be viewed as the degree to which the organizational rules are reinforced by the administrative component. It also represents the attitudes of the organizational members towards the organization itself. Now, if you can see the different pictures on your screen, which include the organizational climate overall, it shows the overall graph of the organizational climate. If you can see, there is a cultural approach, there is an interaction approach, there is a permanent and perceptual approach, and there is a structural approach. The organizational climate, it reflects the current atmosphere of the organization. It evolves around according to the needs of the organization, and it can be manipulated. Whereas the organizational culture, it reflects the atmosphere of the organization, which has evolved over a number of years. It evolves over years, as well as it cannot be easily manipulated and changed. So you are understood about the organizational climate as well as the organizational culture that has been practiced in the organization. Now, thus the organizational climate often distinguishes one organization from another. It is relatively enduring over a period of time and also influences the behavior of the members of an organization. Now, let's take a small break and then we can continue from here. Thank you.
प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े बेमिशा की लोच से युक्त हो, कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े बेमिशा की लोच से युक्त हो। मित्रों हम पढ़े और जागे, मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने, अपना जीवन स्वयं बने हम, अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने। राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बात, कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने हम, अपना जीवन स्वयं बने हम, अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने,
Hello learners. So we were discussing organization as a system and we were discussing the different subsystems of an organization. Let's reread few of them so that we can have a better understanding. Organizations usually have a number of parts or subsystems and the key subsystems are described below. The goal subsystem. It comprises of the overall goals and objective of the organization and also the specific goals of different departments and individuals in an organization. The technical subsystem. The subsystem refers to the use of knowledge, facilities, equipment and technology by the people who work in the organization. The managerial subsystem involves the planning and coordination of the activities undertaken in the organization. The structural subsystem, which the people work together on well-defined tasks and integrated activities in different units like production, marketing, HR or departments, and they make up the structural subsystems. The psychological subsystem. The people live in the social relationships within an organization and this must not be viewed simply in terms of people and technology but also in the terms of coordination or structure of work tasks based on the following certain regulations, rules, norms as well as values. Climate is the atmosphere of an organization, a relatively enduring quality of its internal environment, which is experienced by the members and influences their performance. It also conveys the impression people have about the internal environment within which they work. It may also be viewed as the degree to which organizational rules are reinforced by the administrative component, and it also represents the attitudes of the organizational members towards the organization itself. Thus, the organizational climate often distinguishes one organization from another, and it is relatively enduring over a period of time. It also influences the behavior of the members of an organization. So, in understanding the organizational climate, it is very important and necessary for us to know the organizational members, communicate and relate to each other, the amount of cooperation between the level of the satisfaction and so forth. All these factors determine the effectiveness of an organization. An organization is likely to be more effective if there is two-way communication. Employees are cooperative and have a positive view of the organization. Such employees have higher job satisfaction and commitment. Their productivity will also be higher, and a positive organizational climate results in making the employees more satisfied as well as productive. Now, if you can see on your screen, there is the organizational climate and performance picture. How organizational climates are. So basically, it has the all the performances, employee performance, and then there is a type of organizational commitment which have the effects, the fear of loss, the affection for your organization, as well as the sense of obligations to stay. So there are different organizational climate and factors that can impact and that can bring a huge change if these particular things will not be changed. Now, many factors determine the climate of an organization. At least 4 of these seem specially relevant, and which are the organizational structure. It is the framework of authority, responsibility, relationship in an organization. It clarifies who is to supervise whom and who is responsible to whom. The organizational structure. It serves as the basis of interpersonal relationships between the supervisors, subordinates, as well as co-workers. And for example, if the top management feels the need to give the greater emphasis to the subordinates, it will follow a decentralized structure. So, it is very important that we understand the organizational structure. This also means that there will be a fewer layer in the hierarchy and employees would be encouraged to participate in the decision making. But if the top management likes to maintain a greater consistency in the decision making, it would follow a centralized structure. The technology. The nature of technology employed by an organization also influences the organizational climate. For example, the routine technology like assembly lines tend to create the rules, leading to a rigid climate where trust and creativity are very low. The technology. More dynamic and changing technologies, example the aerospace engineering, seem to lead to a greater trust and personal responsibilities for task accomplishment. The external environment or external events or factors that have relevance for employees may also affect the climate. The external environment. Now, let's take an example. For example, when the economic conditions are severe, the organization are forced to cut down the number of employees. As you have seen also, the recession have came up and the jobs were laying off like we have not seen it before. People who have just joined or have been working for even 10-12 years were forced to quit. So there was a period of recession. Thankfully, India doesn't saw that major recession, but it impacts our citizens as well. Now, those who remain would probably perceive the climate as threatening with the little warmth, support and low motivation. Now, the management policies and practices. The managers who provide their subordinates with more autonomy and feedback contributes significantly to the creation of achievement-oriented climate leading to the greater productivity. So we understood about the different factors that determine the climate of an organization. That included the organizational structure, getting the proper clarification and supervising whom and who would be responsible to whom, and getting the clarification that how we should proceed. The organizational structure also includes the management of the co-workers, subordinates, as well as a structure where people can easily coordinate with each other and ask for the help. It also means that people in the organization, that are employees, should be encouraged to participate in the decision making so that they can also have the feeling of taking care of the organization. Technology, which is a big boom in the today's generation, has to be a part of organizational climate, which would help in aligning the rules, regulations, as well as it will also help in leading to a rigid climate where trust and creativity are low. It will also help in understanding the dynamic and changes that technology is bringing, and also to form a personal responsibility for the task accomplishments. The external environment also employs a very important factors on the employees, as it helps in understanding the severe organizations and are forced to cut down the number of employees. Those who remain would probably perceive the climate as the threatening, with little warmth, support and low motivation. The management policies and practices also is a very important part of the life in the organization. The managers who provide their subordinates with more autonomy and feedback contribute significantly to the creation of achievements-oriented climate, leading to the greater productivity. Now, we understood about the determinants of the climate. We understood about the different parts of organization and how does it work. Now let's understand that what we have learned particularly from this particular chapter, and is our objectives as being fulfilled. We understood about the describing the organization as a system, where we understood that how an organization is, what are the organizational structures are, what are the input and output and the processing factor is. We also understood about the organizational climate, as we have mentioned that how it is very important to maintain a good climate in an organization so that it can work fruitfully and it could be productive. And we also analyze the different factors that can influence the productivity and excellence at work. So all the objectives of this chapter has been completed. This chapter is definitely has other parts which we are going to discuss in our next session. And I hope once you will read this chapter by your own, you will understand it more properly. Thank you.
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने,
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने, अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने, जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो, धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो,
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो,
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो,
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने,
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर, शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर
जाओ परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर